The point in time study mentioned that 85% of the people who were unhoused in our community resided in either Medford or Ashland. But we look at this concern as an overarching concern throughout the county. And to that regard, the county has invested over $3 million to address this concern and make sure that our residents are safe, stable, and that the environment and mental impacts are mitigated.
Jackson County is proud to be a part of the local Public Safety Coordinating Council, joining and sharing with justice agency leaders, educators, service providers, and elected officials creates effective leadership, collaboration, education, and builds relationships that make a safer community. Here are highlights from September's meeting.
So welcome, everybody. It's great to see a full house here. I know there's a lot of different people who have different experiences with this subject. We're looking at homelessness in Jackson County. Today's presentation is part one of two. It's kind of the front end of the presentation. So we're looking at some of the front end strategies for people who are unhoused and unsheltered in our communities in terms of how we are addressing safety needs, how we're addressing their health needs, how we're addressing their behavioral health needs, how we're looking at wellness within our community from an environmental standpoint. And really, when you look at the nature of our presentation today, we're going to talk about environmental strategies for dealing with folks who are unhoused in our communities. We're going to look at policing strategies in terms of how we are addressing folks in our community. And we're going to look at behavioral health for people on the front end from a crisis standpoint, as well as from just a long-term engagement and moving people towards more sustainable housing, what we can do. And for our purposes within the local Public Safety Coordinating Council, we're trying to really focus on that overlap with public safety. So that's really kind of our common ground when we talk about these different pieces, and I hope you'll keep that in mind. So I do want to talk a little bit about the point in time study mentioned that 85% of the people who were unhoused in our community resided in either Medford or Ashland. But we look at this concern as an overarching concern throughout the county. And to that regard, the county has invested in any one year over $500,000 on mental health, and almost another $100,000 on human service grants. County Parks investing $60,000, and then Community Justice, the department that I work at, $2.4 million. County investments are over $3 million to address this concern and make sure that our residents are safe, stable, and that the environment and mental impacts are mitigated.
They're out to help them. That's one of the reasons why I've been out here. After they figure out if they're a veteran, one of the things they do is they back away and they allow me to try to motivate these homeless veterans to get out and get out of this homeless situation and seek services and and utilize them.
You need a jacket? Yeah, we do. Thank you.
Okay, here's a couple water bottle, a couple snack bars. I got some more in the truck if you need some. So
one of the myths is that there's families out on the Greenway that we're dealing with, and I don't remember ever coming across a family in the 7-8 years that I've been doing this operation. We have a lot of individuals that are down their luck, but we also have a lot of criminals on the Greenway. So we brought in parole and probation to help us with this, which has been another great tool.
So how many people actually are experiencing homelessness in Jackson County? Every year we conduct our point in time count, and that's just a snapshot of area homelessness taken on one night during the last 10 days of January. This year's count is a little down from the prior year. The prior year was 732 and this year is 712. And as of last week, we had 1,783 households who were unsheltered. And then we see the number 2,252, and these are the individuals who qualify according to the McKinney-Vento Act. So they're couch surfing or doubling up with friends or family, not having a regular nighttime place to sleep. What's important about the point in time count is that it allows us to capture data on who meets the definition of being chronically homeless. A person is chronically homeless if they have experienced homelessness for at least 12 consecutive months and have a disabling condition, or have experienced homelessness for separate episodes in a 3-year period and also have a disabling condition. When we look at our 3-year statistics on chronically homeless, it was really troubling in 2018 when it suddenly increased to about 1 out of every 3 homeless residents of Jackson County meeting the definition of being chronically homeless. Also troubling is the fact that Orange area just keeps getting larger. and the orange represents those who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness.
Well, for a long time, different law enforcement agencies and different parks departments in the Greenway were working towards the same cause, towards cleaning the Greenway up, but they were doing it under kind of separate planning and coordination processes. So the Parks Department and the Sheriff's Department here within Jackson County stepped up and formed a coalition, I would say, to coordinate with different parks programs across the different cities and the different law enforcement agencies across the valley, and really take a coordinated approach and plan Greenway Sweeps towards getting some of the population that has made the Greenway a home off of the population and making it more of a recreational facility, which is what it was designed for.
Our goal is not to just go out and cite individuals for illegally camping or trespassing on the Greenway, but to actually help them reintegrate into society. So bringing the veterans groups out, bringing Jackson County Mental Health out, and a lot of the other organizations were able to collaborate.
I just wanted to touch base on the Joint Powers Agreement, which is what we have in place to manage the Greenway. And what that is all 5 cities we're in partnership with all the 5 cities that the Greenway runs through, from Ashland to Central Point, as well as the county, to help manage the Greenway. The goal of that was to achieve a uniform Greenway. Funds, all 5 cities and the county puts into the Joint Powers Agreement. With all that funding, we have a $57,000 per year, per fiscal year budget, and that's what I work on. We wanted to maintain 10 feet safety zone on each side of the Greenway path, so that increases visibility and safety, and we wanted the users out there to feel comfortable. We maintain the trail surface, homeless camp cleanups, working with law enforcement, which we'll get into. And we've noticed an increase in vandalism and graffiti, so we try to stay on that when it happens and cover it up. We do 1 to 2 times a month coordinated cleanups. We locate areas where we're having issues and problems and complaints. I put an example in February. We did a cleanup that removed roughly 220 cubic yards of garbage in just February alone. That's a lot.
It was about 10 years ago that we started the program at the Medford Police Department. 4 years in, I saw a huge shift in homelessness. The type of people, we're starting to have more criminals, more mental health clients, and more drug addicted people out there. And a lot of that's a combination of, and I felt like we're beating our heads against the walls. So it was about 6 years ago that we started reaching out to different organizations, and we thought since we couldn't get the individuals we were dealing with to come take services in the daytime, we started bringing services to them. So this is currently where we are: Medford Police, Jackson County Sheriff's Office, Parole and Corrections, Parole and Probation, mental health crisis team's been coming out for several months now, and then the veteran groups that have kind of been there from the start. This is a good group. Anybody that wants to join, we're happy to increase this collaboration to be much more successful. With the Sheriff's Department coming on, it's been about 2 years. It's been a godsend for us because it just helps us with manpower. It also, we're not pushing these people. They're going into the county, and then the county does an operation, then they come back to the city. They understand that, hey, we're here to help you, to get you connected. We're serious about this, and we need to get you off of the Greenway. Again, our goal, is not just to arrest our way out of this, because we can't do that. We're trying to get the service connections.
All right, my name is Scott Clausen. I'm Chief of Police of Medford. And when I heard we were going to talk about homeless and some of the strategies to address it, I was pretty excited because we have a new initiative recently. It's that started in July, and it's our livability team. So the motion was made with our city council to bring staff together and look at how we could enforce city code. We specifically wanted to take a look at the Greenway, of course, and then did the downtown area, and then come up with recommended funding options. In this last budget session, our city council and budget committee decided this was such an important issue that they gave us funding for 2 years. In addition to the personnel for law enforcement, they also gave Parks and Rec an additional $300,000 above and beyond their budget to help it deal with the vegetation removal. So our goals for this unit, one, we know that as in law enforcement, we have to keep the pressure up. We have to enforce the law and target criminal behavior. The second thing that was really important to us was to capture the outreach piece. The outreach portion of this is part of my vision for this team, and it's really important that we accomplish this, but we have to connect the homeless to resources. And through outreach, not only are we recommending services and the right services, but we're also building rapport with folks.
Since we've been collaborating with groups like the Rogue Valley Veterans Community Outreach, Jackson County Mental Health, a lot of other citizen groups are starting to trust the local police and understand that although we have a enforcement job, that we're also reaching out and trying to bring services to the homeless that we come across and try and enrich their lives and get them connected with the group so they can hopefully start reintegrating back into society.
Modern day policing is not a one-man show or a two-man show. Everybody works together. There's partnerships in the community, partnerships with all the different law enforcement agencies. And so if we don't work together, we're just moving the problem around from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
Slowly, what we're finding out is as we bring resources to these people, each time we have contact with them, we're developing trust. We're also able to work with them and gather intelligence for any criminal activity that goes on the Greenway. But only way to really measure it is the fact that people are feeling safer out there using the Greenway. We're having less crime reports, so those statistics are down.
So this is kind of the part about how come, as mental health, how come you guys just can't take these people off the Greenway, take them out of the city parks and get them into some long-term mental health treatment. And there's some challenges that come with that. So I'm just going to address a few of those components and how the system works in Oregon and why sometimes that it doesn't happen that easily. So part of this is understanding that not everybody who may appear mentally ill truly is mentally ill. We all have our bad days. It may be an alcohol or drug intoxication issue. One of the things we talk about in our CIT is understanding personality disorders. Personality disorders are in the DSM, our diagnostic manual, but they're not something that we are able to treat the same way, and it's actually a rule out in a lot of times, and we're looking at involuntary services. It has to be based upon a mental illness, and personality disorder does not count as part of that. So if somebody is having behaviors, but it's just solely antisocial personality disorder, and it's not based upon some mental illness, then we can't move forward with the involuntary commitment process. It has to be based upon a mental illness. Personality disorders are a rule out. So some of the system limitations is the limited availability of hospitalizations or higher levels of care. We really have one secure residential treatment facility here in Jackson County. There really aren't very many facilities statewide. Getting it even into one of these facilities, the threshold is pretty high. It's really those for the most seriously at risk of themselves or others. So the criteria to get into a higher level is a pretty high criteria, the threshold. The other thing is, even if they were able to get to the point of being able to go to the state hospital, which is the highest level of services, even that is a very limited time frame. So the state hospital, they're usually there for 3 different reasons. They're either going there because they've been found guilty, except for insanity. And they're there for about 2.5 years is their average. If somebody has gone through the process to be civilly committed, and I'll talk about that process in a moment, their average is about 4 months. And if they're up there for aid and assist, then they're up there for about 2.5 months. So even if somebody was a high risk to themselves, they went through the whole commitment process, they do get to the state hospital, you're still talking about 4 months before they're going to return back to the community. So the idea that there is some level of long-term treatment that they're going to be in, our long-term treatment for mental health issues is really about 4 months. So we're really looking at the community. What do we do in the community to help get the resources, wrap services around people, because they're not going to, the idea of sending them away to some long-term treatment facility just isn't a reality for most individuals. Some of the treatment limitations. So I always say, you can lead a horse to water, you can lead a person to therapy. People change voluntarily. I don't know if you've ever been to your doctor and they tell you, yeah, maybe you should start doing this, and you walk out like, no way, I'm not going to do that, doctor. Well, how many times do we get people come in and we tell them, you should really change? There's got to be some level of voluntary nature for a true change to happen. So that's always our first approach, is how do we get them involved in services? How do we help them voluntarily change? But there is a point where we can look at involuntary services. There's a threshold that they would need to meet in order for us to involuntarily have them involved in treatment. Again, do they truly change? That's a bigger question. Again, personality disorders, they may look like it's a mental health issue, but it's not related to mental health. It's really a personality. It's a lifelong kind of way of addressing the world. And then really looking at, sometimes people think, well, if they just get medications, maybe that's the answer. But, the efficacy or the effectiveness of medications, they have to take them consistently. And if you've ever seen somebody that has, 10 different medications they may be prescribed at different times of the day, that's a challenge. And then even if they are taking them consistently, it's not 100%. Our psychiatrist, Dr. Mann, talks about those that are on antipsychotics. Even if they're taking them consistently, the efficacy is about 40%, meaning their symptoms would be reduced about 40%. But you still have the 60% of the symptoms that are still remaining, even when they're on their medications consistently. That's the part we still have to address in treatment.